Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar on mental health and wellbeing in performance sport, brought to you by Switch the Play, a charity focusing on empowering sports people to plan for and manage a successful transition out of performance sport. My name is Ian Braid. I'm the head of the mental health and wellbeing program at Switch the Play. But today is not about me, it's about my three very special guests. As we approach the end of Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to host this webinar, and I'm be delighted to join by three people who will tell you that mental health awareness isn't just defined by 1 month, it's defined by every day of every week in every year. My three guests are Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, who is a multi-decorated Paralympian, but significantly out of sport, is the author of the Duty of Care Review on Sport commissioned by the government, but is still working in that area. I'm also joined by Holly Bradshaw, a fellow Lancastrian of mine, who is a former pole vaulter, but will forever be an Olympian. And last but not least, Lloyd Ashley, who is a former rugby player, having graced the pitch with Ospreys, Scarlets, and the prestigious invitation team, the Barbarians. And all three of my guests are passionate about well-being in and after sport. So welcome to the three of you. Holly, if maybe I can come to you first, just to give a bit of background to our viewers and listeners. Tell me how you got into athletics in general, how that got to pole vaulting, and when did you realise I can do this thing?
I think I was always very sporty from the age of 4 or 5 years old. My mum said I had a lot of energy, so she kind of threw me into football and gymnastics and things like that. And it wasn't actually until I was 16 years old that I first picked up the pole. Like everyone can relate to, it's something that you never do at school, you never do at college, you don't do it unless you go to a club and lucky enough to have a club that can do it. And yeah, at 16, I picked the pole up. I was just a filler in. I kind of I didn't do any training, went to the comps, just flung myself over the opening bar to get max points because, of course, I was the only one doing it in the whole of the competition. And it was quite quick that the coach doing like down at the club was like, "Oh, you're actually quite good. Do you want to come and do a trial at Manchester?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." And it just kind of went from there. I went from doing once a week to 5 times a week within the space of a couple of months. And then all of a sudden I was a full-time athlete. And yeah, it spiraled out of control really quick. But it was just the moment I did it, I knew it was the event for me. It just felt completely right. And I just kind of took it in my stride.
So who were those people, like the memorable teacher or whatever? Who were those people that, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today, sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely my mum and dad, but my mum in particular, she's a teacher, but she was very in tune with like psychology, and I was quite a nervous child. So anytime I wanted to try something new, I would avoid it like the plague. I'd remember sat the first time I wanted to go and try pole vault, I sat in the car and I just said, so I don't want to do it. I want to go home. Because anything new for me as a child gave me so much anxiety, like meeting new people, a new environment. And it was her that always persuaded me to go and try it. And if it wasn't for her, I would never have even got out of the car. So she's definitely top of the list. And then yeah, teachers, sports teachers amongst school and college were really inspirational, got me into sports and kept me into sports. And I've had some brilliant coaches along the way. So there's a lot of people that I should be thankful for, really.
What about you, Lloyd? How did you get into rugby, and when did you realise that you could be good at this thing?
I started playing rugby when I was 5. I fell in love with rugby. I remember watching my cousin play, who was a couple of years older than me, and I just fell in love with the game, how much everyone enjoyed it, the fact that you were allowed to be physical and your teachers were shouting at you when you were tackling people, and that was allowed. Pretty honestly, it was quite late to realise that I might have been all right at it. I'd gone to a local college. I'd just been dropped by Wales under 16s, thought everything was over, the dream was over. Wasn't really an academic background for me, so college was definitely the place I wanted to be. I remember Gareth Nicholas, his name was, he said to me, "Oh, if you give me everything this year, I promise you'll play for Wales under 18s at the end of the year." And I thought, Well, I've just been dropped by Wales under-16s, which was my actual age group. And now you're telling me if I do everything I can this year, I'll be playing a year up for Wales 18s. So I thought, right, that's not a bad offering in fairness to somebody. He sees something, let's just give it everything and just see where I am at the end of the year. And in fairness to his word, by the end of that year, I was starting Wales 18s, which was a year up, and I was like, oh, this is all right. And I know we need to be sensible with our hard work, but it was like, right, if he's asking me just to give him everything and he's willing to give all that time back to me, because it goes two ways. Like, it's hard to give everything all the time if you feel like you're not getting anything back or people don't believe in you. But having that support from someone like him is amazing. And then I just think you realise when you go through sport how many good people are involved in whatever sport you're involved in. There's so many good people around there. And I just think that that's a beautiful part of sport because it comes with such high demands and it's a harder task pushing yourself to places other people can't push themselves. But to have people around like that, they just give you faith when at times you don't always have faith in yourself as well.
Tanni, you had a very long and prestigious Paralympic career. How did you deal with the psychological pressures of injury, selection, perhaps the challenges of being an athlete with a disability?
I was really lucky. I had amazing people around me in like my training partners and my coaching group. And some of that was within the governing body, but most of it was outside. Also, my parents were amazing. So my mum loved watching sport. My dad played a lot of sport. So from a really young age, if I did a race, my mum would say, did you win? And my dad would be, did you compete well? And so those are really important things to give balance. And then also at the end of every year, my dad used to say to me, right, you haven't got any money, you haven't got a pension. What are you going to do when you grow up? So I didn't realise that throughout my career, I just had a lot of balance around what I did. But those were the people that helped me. So when times were difficult, when I wasn't winning, when we had coaches within the team saying you should quit, I had people on the outside saying, like, why are you doing it? Is it because you love it? So for me, I was unbelievably lucky to have amazing people. And then just as I got older in sport, I realised that not everybody had that kind of network and not everyone had the right support around them. And, you know, I saw athletes, the way they were dropped, being really badly done and it affecting them for the rest of their lives. And there's an athlete I know very well who's a generation older than me, who's still dealing with the aftermath of getting dropped really badly. And so I think when I transferred out and I started working in politics and sports politics, I was really keen that some of those things about how we put athletes back together and coaches and everybody who's in the sport, because everyone in sport is impacted by this, how we help put them back together and give their right arm to get to do what we've done, but not understand there's a cost that comes with that. And that cost can be really difficult. People on the outside don't get that. I go, yeah, you're wearing a GB tracksuit, you get to travel the world. What have you got to complain about? And so there's not always that understanding of the physical and mental cost of being in elite sport.
Lloyd, you have a phrase about the cost of a job, a really useful perspective to have on mental health and well-being.
Everybody looks at the salary of a job, but they never talk about the cost of that. And by that, who's it going to affect? I think that's a really important input to have. So everybody thinks it's brilliant when contracts are going up and up and up, but they don't see what actually comes with that. It might be more pressure. It might be the fact that when you go out for family time, there's going to be more people coming over to see you. And there's going to be more expectation on you. There's going to be more scrutiny on your social media posts. People will be trawling back from years ago looking for where you might have fallen over. Everybody else is just looking, oh, that guy's jumped up a salary, or now they've got more money, or that female now is getting paid this much per week, or they're going to have this going on, but they don't actually talk about the cost of that on the individual. And I think it's really important that we educate young athletes moving forward. And I don't only mean for transition out of the game when you haven't got those people wanting to be there and talk to you. I mean all the way through the game, that transition from academy to seniors. First of all, that transition from just being in a senior squad to starting playing regularly, from going from that level to being an international. It's important we talk about the cost of that because things do change as well.
Holly, brilliant as it was that you were 4 times Olympian and the first ever woman to win from GB to win a medal in your discipline. there was a cost to you as well, was there not?
I do agree with like the cost. It's not necessarily always to do with what is the cost of like the salary, like actually what is the cost of me doing the sport that I love. I really hope that when everyone as a youngster starts out in their sport, their main aim and priority is to have fun and enjoyment. I don't come across many people that are 6 years old and are like, oh, I do this because I want to earn £1 million or lots and lots of medals. It's because they absolutely love it. And I think that should be the crux of everyone ever getting into sport. I think that is the key for longevity. But I think the cost for me was a lot of, at a young age, a lot of social media abuse. And I think the time in which I experienced it back in 2011, 2012 was when social media was really young in its infancy, and people weren't really sure how to use it, and lots of comments being made about the way I looked. I was an 18, 19-year-old kid just kind of exploding into the sport, and people making comments on Twitter about how unathletic I looked and how imagine how high she would go if she lost some weight, whatever. And I think that's kind of been a lot throughout my career that's gone on. Even as I've got older and more experienced, there's still comments made. I once had an injury and I landed on the mat, but I tore my hamstring, and it was, why hasn't she got up? She landed on a spongy mat, what's the problem, whatever. So I think a lot of the cost that has come in my sport has been from the outside, a lot of social media comments, and I think it's a lot of athletes' problems. A lot of athletes struggle because of this. We're in a society now where everything's on social media. I remember a time where there wasn't any, a much nicer time, I think. And it's actually a big problem with youngsters, and it's scary, but we're having to educate kids because you can't avoid it now. And I think that for me was a big cost to my mental health throughout my whole career. It really shaped the way in which I thought, the way in which I saw myself in physically for a lot of my career.
Thank you. You talk very eloquently about the external pressure and perhaps arguably the ignorance of people on social media, but there was something inside the system as well. You did tell me about that experience when you went for kitting out.
I've spoken openly around 2020/2021 when I was in the best shape of my life going into Tokyo, and the kitting out experience for an Olympics, if you've ever done it, is magical. It's amazing. It's something that if you experience it, you can only really try and describe how amazing it is. And I've always been quite open about, I don't like having my stomach out. I don't like wearing knickers, really short shorts. Everyone has their own preference. Because of my abuse that I've experienced, I'm not comfortable competing in short shorts and my stomach out. It's something I'm very conscious about. And when I went to kitting out, the options that I had for what to wear were very, very limited. It was I either had to wear a baggy vest and long shorts, which being a pole vaulter, I don't want to wear a vest. I've trained for 5 years for this, for small margins. I never compete in a vest because all it takes is for that vest to knock the bar off, and that's the difference between winning a medal and not. I didn't think it was that much to ask to have a tight onesie, a tight whatever that I normally compete in, but that wasn't an option, and I ended up actually wearing the rowing outfit, which was really, really comfortable. It's what I love to wear. But me at 30 years old almost, if I had the confidence to speak out and say I'm actually not comfortable, it really would have affected me competing in that environment in clothes I wasn't comfortable with. But it kind of made me think, well, what about an 18-year-old athlete who's going into that and feels so uncomfortable wearing this? I just felt like I had to speak out and raise awareness for something that potentially hasn't been on anyone's radar, and that was really important to me.
Tanni, there's a lot of sage nodding from you. As a woman, how do you see that as a Paralympic athlete? You see that body image stuff as well?
The kit is an issue, and you see some of the work that's being done now in terms of like changing rules. So like women now are actually allowed to wear shorts, and you wouldn't think we'd be having this discussion now about what women wear, but it didn't happen to me, but it was a young athlete I was working with, 16, and kit she was given for major championships was very skimpy bra top, exactly what you're saying, really low cut. And the position you are in a racing chair, your knees are under your chest. And I remember just looking at this kit going, no, this is not appropriate. So I was the one that went in and had a discussion about that. But I often hear that athletes are at the heart of everything, but sometimes just some of the basic questions about what kit would you be, like to wear. So over the years, I've had cycling kit, I've had rowing kit, I've had lots of other things. And those are the things that you spent all this time training, and then something quite small. And again, you say to the outside world, I don't like the kit. They don't understand. I was lucky, most of my career wasn't social media, but I had, people coming up to me in the street and going, that race was rubbish. You can't say to someone, tell you what, you run an 800 in 48, and then you can come back and have a chat with me. As an athlete, a lot of the time you're kind of thinking how to react in different situations to not make it worse. And I see the impact of social media now, not just on the athletes, but people around the athletes is really hard. And it's not as simple as saying, oh, don't let it worry you. I had one team psych who was saying, oh, put it in a box and bury it in the garden. That didn't work for me. If we don't get the mental health right of everyone who's in the sport, it doesn't matter how much you spend time physically training, we need to understand everything that goes behind it. And also, some of the work I've done with Ian is about athletes positioning out, is what do you do after? And I'm really clear, I've got no issue, every last ounce of athletic talent being sucked out of an athlete before they retire. But it's what we do to put around them to make sure their life after sport is as valuable to them as their time in sport. And it can be very different. There's been a lot of changes and a lot of improvements in GT care, but we've still got some way to go.
Lloyd, how did you prepare? When did you start thinking about transitioning as an athlete? What sort of roles, quals, experience do you do?
I started my readiness for transition virtually as soon as I started in the game. It's a strange thing to say. I had a very serious ACL injury, part of the under-20s World Cup, my first year of Wales in the 20s. And I still remember the surgeon ringing me. He's like, I got good news and bad news for you. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll have the bad news first. And he said, well, you're on your way to arthritis already. And I was like, well, can there be any good news? He was like, yeah, you'll be back by the end of next season. I was like, okay. At the time, it's obviously catastrophic news. You're absolutely devastated to hear it. I was getting through the rehab and I was seeing what setup there was for me, how I was being looked after. And I thought, this ain't bad, is it? Like people being willing to look after me like this. My career could end at any point. So I always done different things. I never knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I tried loads of different things. And I think that really helps you as a person, just show you the outside world and give you an opportunity to realize. I also realized, well, people outside of sport really grafted. So those times where I thought sport was really hard, I'd go, at the time I was plumbing, I was doing my plumbing qualification, and I'd go in the van, my boss would pick me up 6 o'clock in the morning and he'd be like, drop me back off at 6 o'clock in the night. And I'd be like, I'm so glad I'm going to rugby tomorrow. I'm so glad I don't have to do this. And that was just like how you earn money. So give you that realization of earning money. It also gave me a real appreciation of if I walked around locally in an Ospreys tracksuit, everybody wanted to speak to you. You think they know you. What I realized soon is they didn't know me, they knew the badge. And they might have known who I was, but they wanted to speak to me because I had that badge on my chest. And I think it's a really good realization to know that people really want to help athletes. I have a big thought around that a lot of people love sport and really want to help athletes. But also that system goes pretty quick. You get forgotten about pretty quickly. So the fact of being ready for life after rugby, and I'll be honest with you, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, fiance all the way through, was always like, right, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? And I was very lucky through the way. I met loads of brilliant mentors outside of rugby, as well as when I was at the Ospreys, the Welsh Rugby Players Association rep who was there. Like, I've got to give him a massive shout out. He was class. I'd fire some crazy ideas in and I'm thinking about doing this year. He's like, really? Why? And then we sit down and then maybe go down a different plan. So I was very lucky. And then in fairness to Imelda, who works at Switch of Play with you, post rugby, she gave me a fantastic opportunity to go and look after athletes in Swansea University. So I was very lucky there.
Holly, when did you start preparing for transition and how did you do it?
So I did a undergrad part-time throughout my career, and then I also did a master's in sports psychology at Loughborough University. And it wasn't kind of similar to Lloyd. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I enjoyed studying and it never really worked for me to just be a full-time athlete. It was too intense. I always had to be doing something. So I always studied, never really knew whether I would use them, but thought it would be great to keep like my education up. And then I volunteered in a coffee shop actually because coffee is a big passion of mine. And I thought, well, let's go and volunteer in a coffee shop because then they'll teach me how to make a really good coffee, which they did. And then in that last year, I was competing. I always knew I was going to retire after Paris. All the way back in Tokyo, I was like, Paris is going to be my last Olympics, going to be my last year. I always knew I wanted to start a family. So that was kind of going to be the end. So in the lead up to that, I started to prep and designed a coffee brand, a coffee cart, did that in my final year. And that was kind of another option, another string to my bow. Again, I did some work on co-authoring a post-Olympic blues paper. So I just kind of like had my fingers in many pies just to see what I liked, what I didn't like, and that kind of really stood me in good stead on retiring because I have my coffee cart that I go to events on, and I've actually got a full-time job working as an operations lead for a gymnastics club. So keeping your education up and just trying lots of different things, even if it's just to put a cross through that, actually, I didn't really like that, or just to circle something to say, actually, I like doing that. Maybe that's an option. It also is just good to do something else other than your sport. When you have big stints like I did of being injured, and I spent 6 months of one of my years not training, not doing anything because I had to rest a fracture in my back. If I didn't have anything else to do, I think I would have gone insane. So it's always good for athletes to be doing other things.
What was the provision inside your sports to help you with your mental health and well-being? Did you use it? Was it really helpful or not?
It was not a great deal of provision, but there was a lot of good people. And I think sometimes as well, when we go down the provision route, that we've got to remember how important the connection piece to people are. Through my career at the Osprey, especially early on, breaking, had a lot of life going on behind the scenes with family stuff. But for some reason, he allowed me to be able to go in there and speak to him. I know that's not the case for everybody. And I think that's why it's important to have a very strong provision in place. But I also think that when we put provision in place, we've got to really be careful to not get rid of that really person-centered in the building care as well, because a lot of support is actually peer-to-peer support, and that could mean player to coach, player to player, player to support staff, as well as then if it is more clinical or you don't want to access the support in there, it'd be better to have that support away from the environment to be able to go there. And I have seen a massive shift in that support away from the environment now, and the acceptance of that support away from the environment, that it's not because they go there, we don't know anything about it, so we're not going to willing to support that. It's okay, that's fine. If they feel that's best for them, that's best for us as well, because they're going to have the best support. So I have seen that shift, and there is still work to do, because I think sometimes when we speak about where it was to where it is now, it feels like we've glossed over some of it, but there's still work to do. And I think that's important. I always say, everyone says, oh, it's brilliant, that's in place now. And I'm like, yeah, we're probably a bronze. I'd like to get to gold at some point, and by the time we get to gold will be bronze, and we have to try and go again to get to bronze. So never being sat still on that, but being able to grow that and remind people why we're doing it as well.
And what about in the world of athletics, Holly? What was the provision around mental health and well-being, and how do you see it today?
I was lucky. I had a very long spanning career. I was competing at the top level for 15 years, and it's definitely changed for the better along the way. I think when I started my career, there was a lot of stigma with getting help, seeing a sports psychologist. Well, I don't need to see a sports psychologist. And I've done a lot of work to tell people that you don't see a sports psychologist when you need help. Like, it can be useful and performance enhancing, even if you feel like you're completely fine. And I was lucky. I saw a brilliant sports psychologist throughout the whole of my career. And I think something that stood out to me was every time we chatted, it just felt like we were having a chinwag over coffee. And the amount of stuff we actually delved into without me even knowing was crazy. It wasn't like we sat down, did a questionnaire. It wasn't like that. It was new and trendy, and we just were having a chat. But I felt so much better after it. And that showed me that you don't need to sit down in an office like people think and have that kind of therapy. That can be very useful. And I have seen a clinical psychologist for part of my career, which I really needed and was so useful and really beneficial. But actually, just having support there, I got on really well with one of my physios around Tokyo, and he offered me as much support as a qualified sports psychologist, because in that moment, that's what I needed. I needed an ear. I needed someone that's there just to support me, someone to just listen and say, you're going to be okay. And that can be anyone. That could be a physio, a massage therapist, just the head coach, just anyone really. Like, it's important to have those support systems around you, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, oh, I see a sports psychologist and they make me feel good. Anyone can make you feel good, and they're just an integral part of your team. And I think that needs to be spoken about more. It doesn't need to be so formal. It can be anyone.
Tanni, you had mental health and well-being as a key topic in the duty of care review. Why and how do you see it now?
So when I was asked to do the piece of work, I think was thought that I was just going to concentrate on athletes. But actually, for me, it's got to be everybody who's in the system. And some of this comes back to my own experience. So I'm quite a lot older than Lloyd and Holly. So actually, in my early years, we actually had some amazing people to work with team, but it was a volunteer structure. And then when jobs started coming in Paralympic sport, a lot of those people were working at a really high level and couldn't afford the pay cut to come and work in sport. And then so it's been quite up and down through the years. And actually the last sports psych I had was clinically trained. And for me, that was really important at that moment because of what I was going through. So it is good that we can talk about it more. But also on a bit of a twist to that, I had an athlete contact me recently who said they don't have any mental health issues, but they're being asked about their mental health all the time. It's like, would you like to talk about your mental health? And it's like, it's okay to not talk about your mental health as well. You don't have to have had trauma in the mental health space to be an athlete either. I think we just have to be quite balanced about this. So I think, we've come a long way. But actually, I think there's lots more we need to be thinking about the coaches, about the physios. I've had amazing physios who I sit and talk to as well, about what we do to help them to deal with the things they're being told. I used to tell my physio everything. It's about what support we can give to them, because I think just things we can do. I am pleased that we're talking about it more, and it's understood that this is a really important part of getting you to the start line and getting you in shape and getting you through what is a really high pressured situation. It's a good time to kind of review. It's 10 years since, just about 10 years since duty of care. What have we done well? And we should be proud of that, but what more we can do?
I think that speaks to Lloyd's point about maybe we're at bronze and we want to get to gold. It's the positioning that Switch the Play takes within the offer of all of the menu of services that the charity offers to athletes is what we call the psychological care pathway. And I think the two things that are the real USPs of that are linked together: the confidentiality and the independence. There's a team of people that understand and get performance sport, but they're not in performance sport. And they're certainly separate from the world of pole vaulting or playing as a second row forward or whatever. And I think there's space for that independent position as well as within the system. And in the PCP, we have sports psychs and psychs, but we have people who understand about addiction, sleep, or nutrition. What we will do at the end of this session is put a link to my colleague Imelda, and she will be very happy to field any call and start those discussions, because I think it's important for everybody to own that responsibility for mental health. And I think it speaks to your point, Lloyd, that it's not just about having to react to a mental health issue. It's a proactive thing. And you do that in your work now. What are the key things that you give to your clients from your peer community?
Simplifying it, because mental health is everywhere now where we go, and rightly so for a lot of campaigns. But I think sometimes what it doesn't do is make it simple, like a reminder that we've all got mental health. We're all on that continuum, and somewhere, and some days will be different to others. There's obviously certain events that will have an effect, but even with day-to-day life going on, we can be up and down that continuum. It'll be hard to regulate ourselves, and we're under pressure a lot. So if we can't regulate ourselves because of things going on that we haven't dealt with from a mental health point of view, we're probably going to notice the fact of being able to stay focused in sessions and not drifting off, whether it's the fact that from contact in rugby, that all of a sudden when somebody tackles you, you want to lose your head and get frustrated quite easily, so you can't regulate yourself there. And the other one is how we connect to people, our normal balancing it against our normal level of connection, because normally if we are struggling with things, and like mental capacity isn't as free as it normally is. It normally changes how we connect to people. We're either maybe not as giving of time and we want to get away from that conversation, or somebody who likes time alone all of a sudden because they've got so much going on in their head, they don't want to be alone, they want to be with people around them, they want to be connected to everything. So noticing those subtle difference in your connection and how you regulate yourself, I think is really important when it comes around mental health. And for us, I think as any of us around sport and still being around athletes and as around practitioners, is simplifying it rather than making it more complex. And I do fear that the more we've brought it up, we've actually made it more complex rather than stripping it back down to we care about you as a person, and that's what we're here for.
Holly, I've got a last question for you, then I'll just come around the block and summarise. But you find yourself in the prestigious position as being a member of the IOC Commission on Mental Health. What's that about? How do you want to, what will success look for you in that role?
It was a real honor to be asked. There's multiple of us around the world, a couple from Europe, from Asia, all the continents. And basically our role is just to fly the flag of raising awareness for mental health, what the IOC or what various governing bodies are doing to support athletes and help them with their mental health. I attended events in Lausanne in person just to support, whether it's webinars or in-person events. Athletes don't necessarily have an idea where to go to, whereas people know they can message me on social media, they can email me, they've got access to people in the form of athletes rather than not knowing who to really contact. I think the IOC they did a great job in Paris with having certain spaces that athletes could go to get support. Before a message comes into an athlete's inbox of abuse, they've got programs and systems to get rid of that. And all these little things are helping. Slowly but surely it's getting better. And I think it's a privilege just to be asked to do that. It's a big passion of mine, so it was easy just to say yes. I want to help in whichever way I can. It's been good so far, and I look forward to kind of doing more of this in the future.
Lloyd, coming to you first. Is there something that you would leave us with as a tip or a piece of advice for anybody around their mental health and well-being, proactive or reactive?
I think it's remembering that we've always got mental health, so the more we look after it proactively, the better chance we've got of looking after ourselves. And then we'll all struggle from time to time. I don't think that's anything to be embarrassed about, but the more honest we are with ourselves day to day, the easier we notice that drop off of mental health rather than it going slowly down. Hopefully we deal with it when we've just dropped a little bit. So I think the proactive approach doesn't stop you struggling with your mental health, but hopefully it stops you only realizing when we're living a hope and we're thinking about suicide. Hopefully it stops us a lot further up the tree. So for me, it's always being proactive and finding space where you're comfortable being honest. I think at times we think because it's out there all the time, there has changed loads. Well, actually, there used to be people who were really honest with each other anyway. So actually finding my conversation is always how low can the barrier to that conversation be? Like you should be able to bring anything to that table, not just I'm really struggling, I need to speak on mental health now. It should be the fact of, man, I don't know why I haven't been able to sleep the last 3 nights. I don't know what it is, but my head's just busy. Okay, let's deal with that now rather than 4 or 5 weeks of no sleep, still trying to perform at a high level and you're feeling really down there. So that would be my advice to anybody wherever you are right now.
Holly?
I think for me, it's would be knowing your triggers and just trying to avoid situations that potentially exacerbate your triggers. I always had a little social media detox 2 weeks, 3 weeks before an Olympics or a World Champs. And as hard as that is for athletes, because whether you like it or not, social media is kind of an athlete's livelihood. It's a way in which you make money, help promote your sponsors, but social media was a trigger for me, and I knew that. So leading into a major champs, I put it in place that I was off it, and if I wanted to post something about a sponsor, I'd send it to my husband or a friend and they'd post it on my behalf. So I think it's important to know what triggers you and be honest and open and get help and support on that. I hope that athletes are doing this, but it always stems back to know why you're doing the sport. Why is it that you are doing it? And more often than not, it's because you love it and enjoy it. And of course, part of being an athlete is sponsors and appeasing them and the pressure of social media and the pressure of this. But I always used to bring it back to, well, I'm actually doing this because I love it. Like if the Olympics was down at the park with one person watching it, it would still mean just as much to me. So I always came back to that, and that always kind of just all the pressures just floated away.
Great. Tanni, last word from you. Any piece of advice you'd give to anybody listening to this today?
You've got to love your sport because you don't always like it. And it's remembering what you're doing. And I think it's about having those good people around you. Find the people around you that, can help. And sometimes family are amazing. My family are amazing, but your family are also really emotionally involved in stuff. And sometimes you need to go outside to find people who care and understand and know all the nuances. I think someone who knows the nuances of sport is really important, and finding some sport to talk to. And I think what Lloyd said is like mental health is every day. My resilience changes within a week, within a day. I'm also menopausal, so it can change within 20 minutes. And there's an assumption that an athlete has lots of resilience and strong mental health because of the stuff you have to do. And actually, us athletes are really good at hiding stuff. When you walk onto the pitch or the track, I used to throw it before every single race I did with nerves, but you try and hide it because, you're meant to show a certain persona. And it's understanding those moments when you're on field of play can be different from when you're on the track in Middlesbrough and it's -3 and the rain's coming in sideways. Those are the moments I actually remember in sport. My career, 25 years, beginning to end, on the track at Paralympics is 19 and a half minutes of my life. So that's stuff that puts it in perspective. So I think as an athlete, coach, whatever, you've always got to try and put it into perspective. But just find people that can help, because there's loads of support out there. It's actually the hardest bit is always the first bit of asking for help. But once you've done it, the rest, it kind of falls into place. And we've got, a duty to look after each other, and the work of Fish Play, it's finding those people that you treasure and look after them.
We've got one question. Is it confidential?
There are two critical things about the psychological care pathway within this Switch the Play offer. One, it is 100% confidential. Even within Switch the Play, the sessions remain confidential with the person that you speak to. So nothing is fed back. And I can't reiterate strongly enough its importance to me of independence. Tanni's mentioned family, friends. Sometimes it could be the people in the sports. It's about trust. I know because of my work inside Switch the Play that people can 100% trust the independence and the confidentiality of the system.
I am a coach of junior triathletes, some of them whom are performing at a high level, regional academy. What advice would you give a coach who knows that the majority of them aren't going to, quote unquote, make it, to help them keep enjoying their sport?
If they're still loving it, why are we even worried about the conversation? I think it's being honest in terms of not saying to somebody like, oh yeah, I definitely think you're on track for the Olympics if you think within a year or two they're going to be out of that system. But it's also when you are sitting down for those individual feedback sessions, like finding out what are they getting out of the sport, what do they still love about it, and where is their ambition to go? Is it just to be, I want to know when I leave this system, because some people's ambition is, when I leave the system in 2 years' time, which I think I will, I just want to know I've given it everything and I've been part of an elite system for where I go future. Other people then, if they've got a distorted reality, I think it's on us as practitioners and people around to talk to them about that. Like, where do you think you are from a performance level point of view? Where do you think your growth is? What do you think that will give you? You see where the times are over the next couple of years. Like, do you think that's realistic ambition for you? And what would have to change from now for you to get to that? So I just think it's having those honest conversation. Where do you want to be? What are you still loving being in the sport? Is it giving you what you want? And yeah, where do you see yourself in 2 years? And if they ask you honestly, I think they deserve the right for you to be honest back as well.
Holly, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's like everyone has different answer for what they think success is, and who's to say that, just making it to a certain level isn't their Olympics. I think part of the elite system is everyone thinks, oh, I've made it when I've got to the Olympics. It's like, who's to say what's making it and not? And I think as long as they're enjoying it and they're showing progress and they love it, then like what Lloyd said, is that conversation even needed to happen? Like, I understand if someone's coming in every every day and they're 26 years old, I'm going to make it to the Olympics. Maybe a conversation needs to happen if they're not. But if they're a young athlete, they're enjoying the sport, they're showing progress. I'm pretty sure someone would have said to me at 16 years old, well, actually, you don't usually pick up a pole at 16 and make the Olympics at 20. That's very unrealistic and probably not going to happen. Well, it did. It's not about feeding unrealistic goals, but why do we even need to talk about it? It's like, let's keep showing progress, enjoy yourself, and who knows what could happen.
I've got a question from Amy. What are the most common mental health challenges athletes experience during their careers?
Lots, injury, selection, deselection. I've been in a situation where I got selected for Sydney and none of my training group did. And I'm like really happy and they're really sad, and then you feel guilty and there's lots of things. I still think, deselection is a big part that I've seen athletes absolutely devastated again when they've been selected and people they've trained with haven't been. And it's just lots of things. It's the daily grind. I think there's an assumption sometimes that, we're all training in beautiful venues overseas all the time. And don't get me wrong, I do get to travel a lot, but it's up and down the roads around Redcar. And they just don't see that. So I think there's just lots of bits of it. And then you've got everything that non-athletes deal with, like family and relationships and boyfriends and girlfriends and partners and pets. And that's like another layer to it that sometimes, if you've got stuff going on in your personal life, inside the sport, they might not always want to know about that or understand it. So there's so many layers that can impact and makes it just hard to deal with. I've seen athletes just not deal with stuff while they're competing and just kind of keep pushing it back and back. And then when you stop and you lose the identity of being an athlete, so my parents always brought me up to be a Venn diagram, which is being an athlete's a teeny part of what I am, and I'm Welsh and I'm a mum and I'm a wife and I'm all these things. But I've been retired 20 years now and I still get people saying, oh, you're that athlete, aren't you? You don't want to say like I'm really old and I've retired, or do they think I need training as a commentator? Or identity is a real part of how you put yourself back together at whatever point in your career you need to.
What I think we don't do enough of is early in careers highlighting what things could affect your mental health. And so when they come up, it isn't like, oh, I don't know why I'm really demotivated now. It's like, oh, well, no wonder I'm demotivated. I haven't been selected for the last couple of weeks, but I don't want to carry on not making the most of these training weeks to try and get better again, because we waste time by not speaking about them proactively. And I think because, especially if I look at a team sport, there's other people going through it at the same time. We don't speak about it. We're like, oh, well, so-and-so's been dropped as well. And so we'll go and sit in the corner and sap about it. Well, actually, if sapping sometimes is the best way to deal with it for some people, because then they get off their chest and they go. For other people, they don't speak about it. So for me, it's raising that awareness, but then also saying it potentially could make you feel like this. Feelings might be different for everybody when you go through it, but like this is the support system in place for you. And then a reminder, because there are generic key stresses to sport. Your levels of performance, you're being dropped, the major competitions coming up, contracts. We talked about social media earlier. Just over a handful of things that are key stresses. So I feel the more open we are to them, allow people to speak about them, because I hear a lot all the time, oh, it is what it is, isn't it? But what does that mean? It is what it is, so you're really struggling with it, or it is what it is, so you can just put it away and you can get on with it. Going that next level on that conversation, I think is really important when we have raised that awareness and reminder for them.
What does the process look like for someone who reaches out for support? The first thing is to make the contact with the charity, and we're very lucky to have Imelda, who's taking the calls and responding to the emails, who has got a lot of years of experience in performance sport at all levels on the talent pathway. And she will have with you what is called a discovery call, and that is to understand your situation and what your needs may well be. From that, within Switch the Play, there is a sort of a smorgasbord of different products and services that she can reach out to and start to tailor what might be necessary. And that could well be because of the mental health pressures, for whatever reason, that the psychological care pathway is the first step. And if that's the case, then they are referred and the athlete has an opportunity to have an initial conversation and then 6 free sessions based on their well-being. They are referred into the PCP, but what I think is also really helpful about the system is at the end of the number of funded sessions, then Switch the Play picks up the athlete again and then says, how else can we help you? And that may well be just as gentle as being made aware of the peer community, but it could be to the access of other products and services that may then be relevant. There's no one size fits all. It's a very unique and tailored offer from Switch the Play. Thank you once again to Lloyd, to Holly, and to Tanni, 3 brilliant and talented people, and not just because of their sport. Thank you very much to you all.